Moving on now, we have another three very exciting guests I'm very pleased to introduce to you. We're now going to talk about NFTs as a game changer, the idea of earning money from NFTs. It may be a new concept to you. I'm going to hand you to Justine Humenansky. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it this year, but Justine will explain, along with our two very exciting guests, just exactly how NFTs are working and how they're becoming part of a real economy too. So Justine, welcome. She's joining us from New York. Thanks so much for getting up early this morning. Hello from London.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Very excited for this conversation on NFTs. We have two panelists that we're going to be chatting with this morning. Gabby Dizon, who's driving the Play to Earn movement, is co-founder of Altitude Games, Yield Guild Games, Nara Gallery and Nifty Fund, and Twobadour, who is steward of Metapurse, which is the largest NFT collector in the world. And he has been investing in NFTs since 2017. So welcome to you both. And I think I gave very brief intros, but I think it would be great just to kick it off with you telling us in your own words a little bit about the work that you're doing with NFTs.
Gabby, I'll let you go first.
Okay. All right. So my name is Gabby Dizon, and I've been in the game industry since 2003. So it's 18 years in the game industry now. In 2014, I started a mobile game studio called Altitude Games to create games for iOS and Android phones. And in 2017, we heard about Ethereum and smart contracts, and we started taking a look at this to see how it could change the game industry. And from there, ran into NFTs when CryptoKitties was released. So been very deep in the NFT scene since 2018, and now co-founded a play-to-earn gaming guild called Yield Guild Games, or just Yield Guild. And what we do is that we invest in NFTs from different play-to-earn games, such as Axie Infinity, Sandbox, Formula 1 Delta Time, and we lend it out to our player community, many of them in developing countries, so that they can earn an income from playing these games.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Twobadour. I'm the steward of Metapurse, which, like Justine just said, is the largest NFT fund in the world. I have the awesome job of trying to identify diamonds in the rough, these incredibly culturally significant NFTs and NFT-based projects to invest in. At Metapurse, we believe that NFTs represent the culmination of what crypto is all about. And we're in a very exciting period right now.
Excellent. And so you're both pushing the NFT space into an area of experiences and consumption rather than just collecting and then flipping the assets quickly. Could you both talk about how you're working towards that vision respectively?
Okay, so I guess I'll go first. So for us, NFTs are really meant to be used. So we invest only in NFTs that can be played inside a game and earn some kind of reward, resource. So for example, in Axie Infinity, the resource token that is earned by our players is called SLP, or Smooth Love Potion. In Formula 1 Delta Time, they earn the Rev token. And these are the tokens that people earn while they are basically playing these games. So for us, when we invest in assets inside the game, we really don't look to sell them. We want to build the largest collection of basically working assets in the metaverse that we can then match with our user base that is very passionate about these games. So yeah, like we're very excited about just the emergence of play to earn as the big new trend coming out of games, and seeing these NFTs matched with players around the world that are excited and skilled to play these games, having them earn an income that is usually above what is the minimum wage offered in these countries. So yeah, we really want to drive the utility for these NFTs.
Brilliant. You know, what Gabby said is a perfect illustration of the fact that there are way more imaginative ways, right, to monetize and engage with NFTs, and that's something we've always believed in, even when in the early days of 2017, when Decentraland was just dots on a screen, right? So till date, Metapurse has not sold a single NFT. We have the entire collection with us. We haven't sold them because we really do feel that that's a very limiting way of engaging with them. And these new models of play to earn, of fractionalized ownership, and so on, represent a lot of opportunity. And the more we figure out utility, like Gabby just said, and experience when it comes to NFTs, you can think of even better models to monetize as well.
Yeah, so powerful, and I think having like real user stories of how people are interacting with NFTs is really important to kind of push the space forward. How is the play to earn movement kind of happening on the ground? How do people learn about the opportunity to earn a living through play to earn?
So we actually released a documentary on this, on the play to earn, and it happened actually last year during the early part of the lockdown. Here in rural Philippines, it wasn't really in the city centers, where the people who were laid off, they basically found Axie Infinity. And when people start posting about, hey, I'm playing this game, and then I was able to cash out like a month's salary, 2 months salary, I was able to buy food for the table. In some cases, I was able to buy a car, and in some cases, some people are even able to buy a house from their earnings playing games. Like when people post these online, it catches a lot of attention and virality. And now we really have communities in different cities around the world of people helping each other on how to play the game, how to onboard, how to use a crypto wallet, get better at the game, and earn more. It's such an amazing thing to see, because it's all very community based. People aren't really like competing with one another, but they're helping each other kind of onboard into crypto and into games, and to learn how to make a living from it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, just looking at it from another angle, right, is that when it comes to, say, games like F1 Delta Time, it also transforms the nature of the NFTs themselves and make them sort of cash generating assets in a sense. They start to pay back what you pay for. As you know, we have the Delta Time 111 F1, the first car introduced by the Formula One thing. So by playing that car, it becomes a cash flow token in a sense. It started to pay itself back. And that's also a very exciting angle when it comes to play to earn games.
Yeah, I love that way of looking at them as cash flow generating tokens.
Yeah.
What else I think is really cool about the work that you're doing is that, other than demonstrating that NFT usage can be more than just speculative, is that you're onboarding whether it be artists that weren't previously able to earn a living from their art, or enabling people to access new economic activities. I would love to understand how each of you thinks about reducing barriers to entry, particularly in cases where the price of an NFT may be very high.
Interesting. I think the fact that someone like me, who has zero expertise when it comes to technology or finance, is in this space is is telling by itself, right? The word I'd use, and this is something Metapurse talks about a lot, is variance, right? Until now, crypto was a space only for people well versed in coding, or who were extremely canny when it came to finances, and where those two met. Because of the NFT space, you get a lot of this these supplementary roles, this additional economy, the parallel economy that forms of creators and creatives. It opens it up. These jobs that you see right now, when I say jobs, I suppose more like opportunities for people who can tell stories, who can do art, for instance, who can design, are very real, and they didn't exist before, right up until the DeFi space. The NFT space opens it up all over. When it comes to the barriers of entry, friction that we see about setting up a crypto wallet, for instance, or understanding it, I have a feeling that it's a necessary friction. I think you need to go through that journey a little bit so that you understand the actual risks when it comes to crypto. If all of that is abstracted away, then you end up losing your private keys or giving away your seed phrases. That's not something you can come back from, right? So I think that amount of friction is essential, even if it is going mainstream very quickly.
Yeah, very highly agree with Twobadour on that one. And for us, we're not, our main audience aren't really kind of technical people. A lot of them are simply gamers people who have maybe played a lot in their childhood. We even have like grandparents who are playing this game because they want to earn some extra money. So most of the people that we work with are first-time crypto users, have not interacted with a crypto wallet before, and some of the NFTs that they may be using are a little bit expensive. So we do invest in the NFTs ourselves, and then we lend them out to the players so that we don't need them to come up with the upfront cost.
And that's through the Yield Guild, which is
That's
a DAO.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
I think DAOs are an awesome kind of tool to pull together to be able to access some of these NFTs that may otherwise be inaccessible. I think another cool thing that you're part of is the First to Mint Fund. So for kind of helping creators or artists with the upfront costs of creating their first NFT, which is awesome to improve kind of accessibility.
Yeah, so First Mint Fund happened because we, in my spare time, I co-own an NFT art gallery in Decentraland. And when we were onboarding a lot of new artists to the NFT space, we noticed that most of them basically couldn't afford the gas cost of coming in. And we wanted NFTs to be accessible for any artist that wanted to come in. We didn't want it, a barrier to be, maybe you're paying $100 to $200 for minting your first NFT when you don't know anything about the space, and that's simply just too much of a barrier for people to overcome. So we seeded the wallet with actually, I think it was just 1 Ether, and then we promoted the First Mint Fund as a way to get Southeast Asian artists to mint their first NFT, and from there other donations came in, and then we started giving out money to pay for the gas cost of artists. And now I think there's around $20,000 in the wallet, and it's managed by one of the artists that we onboarded. And yeah, we've seen just a great amount of talent just come in and mint their NFTs.
Yeah, it's so exciting how NFTs can kind of onboard a bunch of people that otherwise might not be in crypto. It's really awesome. I think one of the other things I've heard you talk about is kind of open ownership and collective experience of NFTs. And so I think that kind of coincides with the intersection. There's been a lot of talk about the intersection of NFTs and DeFi, but maybe let's talk about intersection of NFTs and the metaverse. And so would love for you to kind of explain how you see the intersection of those two things, and like maybe how we can view some of the NFTs in the metaverse.
Oh, absolutely. This is sorry, was this for Gabby, or was this a question to me?
Both.
You take it first, Twobadour.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. This is a bit of a passion thing for us. In fact, this is one of the key questions we were asking ourselves, right? Late last year, around October, November. Where is the space headed next? What can we do? What can NFTs be, basically? And the idea that it needs to shift from this the flipping model to an arena of experience, was incredibly appealing to us. And the way we sought to do that was through the B20 project, which was a labor of love, and I think stupendous in how the community embraced it as well, which showed us that there is a real demand for spaces in the metaverse to experience these NFTs on more than one level. So the whole idea of B20 was this collective, this open experience and collective ownership. And that's what we basically did. We bought those 20 single edition pieces of Peoples, which we dropped in December, and created these monuments for them in various metaverse worlds, right? In CryptoVoxels, Decentraland, Somnium Space, and Sandbox. And the launch event itself, which we call the Metapalooza, after the Lollapalooza in Chicago, was the first truly interoperable event in the metaverse. As in, irrespective of where you were, you could either be an avatar in Decentraland or CryptoVoxels, or just via audio on Discord. You could still experience the event in all its grandeur. So that was super exciting for us. And the launch of the B20 token itself was also an experiment in collective ownership. It's a very simple token, right? It's not a utility token. It's not a governance token. It just is almost like a single-celled organism, like the Bitcoin of the NFT space, if you can have it. It just represents ownership of that experience, of the B20 experience, and the fact that over 5,000 people are holders of that token now, without us ever having to create a Discord channel for it or any sort of further marketing or pumping of it at all. It's just that people want a piece of something of that sort. That is the whole idea.
Okay, so for me as a game developer and a fan of science fiction, I'm very, very passionate about this, us kind of heading to the metaverse. And I would say that I think as a concept, the metaverse is still very early on, but we have started to get the building blocks in place in terms of the NFTs, for example, that are permanent, that are interoperable. They're sitting on a ledger that stores value. And what's happening in the next few years and months is that we're seeing a lot of very immersive experiences being built on top of these assets. And yeah, this is really one of the things that I'm most excited about in this space, and it's something that I'm dedicating the next decade plus of my life to.
Yeah, I love that idea of NFT representing kind of ownership of an experience. That's really awesome. So you're both obviously very forward-thinking, have been way ahead of the curve on multiple transformative trends. So what do you think will be the future use cases for maximizing utility and yield of NFTs in the metaverse?
I'd say gaming, definitely. I think the way the gaming world itself is evolving right now, they're becoming more high fidelity. The experiences are becoming that much more richer, and with phenomena like play to earn, the work that Gabby is doing with Yield Guild and so on, it becomes such an exciting space. On the one hand, you have I always like to look at this in terms of three layers, and that's when the metaverse really comes together. The first layer is ownership, which you start to understand very instinctively when you start to play games in the decentralized space. Whereas in your usual AAA games, when you spend hundreds of dollars, thousands in some cases, on in-game assets, they don't really belong to you. But when you start to see that an in-game asset within a gaming world, like Axes, is something that you actually own, there's a switch flips in your head. That's the first layer. The second is utility. So what do I do with these NFTs? And the utility start to become more exciting as the day goes on, right? Like I said, what was just a digital card is now a cash flow token. Same for other in-game assets. The third layer is interoperability. A single NFT, which is basically a digital pointer of ownership, can mean different things in different metaverse worlds. So when we have that third layer also click into place, you have the true metaverse at play. And I can only imagine, the possibilities that financial models can have in such a setup, right? Where you have ownership, which is instinctively understood, and because it's understood, you can have these models on top of ownership, like starting to lend your NFTs for an interest later on, or starting to use them as collateral to get loans and so on. So on that level, and there's so much you can do. So once these three elements click into place, you have the true metaverse. That's where I think it's all headed.
And where do you think we are in terms of the path to having the interoperability? I feel like I've been hearing about this as kind of the holy grail for gaming NFTs for a while.
Interestingly enough, I think it's kind of already here in bits and pieces, in like flashes in the pan. I think this needs a certain shift in the mindset, because when you think of interoperability, what most people think of is standardization. How do we create one unified standard? That I don't think is going to work, especially when you're talking about decentralized worlds, where each of them have different rules, which is how it must be. So maybe interoperability is rather this flexibility to be different things in different worlds. So when that shift happens, and there are some examples here. Carrying a single NFT does give you multiple benefits even within Decentraland, for instance. There's something that Matty of DCL Blogger is trying to build. He's calling them meta keys, for instance. So something of that sort, I think will pick up a lot of steam and has a lot of potential.
Okay, what I'd like to add to that is that our view is that the metaverse is really where the future of work is headed. So there's this been kind of dystopian notion that as people lose jobs in the real world because of AI and automation and robots, what are people going to do? And I think that people are largely gonna go into these virtual worlds and earn some kind of income. So it may not be just as a player like what you're doing, Axie. What we're seeing is that there's actually a lot of roles for different kinds of people with different skills in the ecosystem. Of course, you can be a coder, you can be an artist, you can be an animator, but you could also be, for example, a fashion designer, a level designer, a storyteller. So I think that there's just going to be so many kinds of jobs needed to kind of fill out the metaverse. And yeah, this is really the most exciting part to me.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess what's really interesting about what you've both been saying this morning is just really kind of expanding the perception and idea of like what an NFT is and can be, and the utility of the NFTs. How do you think about kind of changing that perception in the mainstream, or just getting the awareness out that NFTs can have a much broader utility than just, I think, what people think of as, like typical art pieces? In other words, like how do we spread the word about all the things that NFTs can be and represent?
Okay. Oh, I think by telling stories from this space, I think stories are incredibly powerful, and NFTs lend themselves beautifully to stories. I mean, look at the Yield Guild documentary itself, right? As somebody who's observing all of this, I have told Gabby's story countless times to people when they ask about NFTs and what kind of a real world impact they can do. I mean, it's so evocative, right? You don't need to be an expert in anything. By playing a game, you're able to pull yourself out of poverty, bang in the middle of a global crisis. It's a very, very powerful story. And there are so many stories like Metacoven's, his background to what crypto meant for him, the freedom of, sort of overcoming his circumstances and, getting a seat at the global table, which nothing else can give you, right? It would take lifetimes to do so in the conventional setup, but then crypto enables all of that stuff for you. So to be able to tell these stories from within the metaverse, young people, a digital native generation building exciting and cool stuff, a global sort of teams working together, like the B20 project, right? Without the need for a lawyer or any sort of complex HR setup, we were able to work with 30 of the best minds in this space. Creators, architects, communicators, people who were experts at tokenomics, for instance, all of them coming together on one single project from all across the globe. So stories like that, I think, need to be told more often. And if that's one of the reasons why we kicked off the Metapurse Fellowship, right, where we opened up $500,000 for 5 people who would come and talk about metaverse stories. Now it's sort of evolved into something else. We've worked with the NAS Daily Academy, where we have 50 people, 50 content creators who will work to tell exclusive stories from the crypto space, from the metaverse. Apart from those, we also have 2 people who are native to the digital space, trying to tell these stories. I think once we kick that off, and once it inspires more storytellers in the space, I think that will be the key differentiator.
Yeah, I think that's so important, not just to
100% agree.
Yeah, I think it's so important, not just to the NFT space, but to the crypto space in general, like having stories of real users and real world impact, and how this can be a really transformative technology. So important to the development of the industry. Speaking of that, on a related note, a lot of NFT projects kind of have an element of giving back. So like whether that's that the proceeds of the auction of an NFT will go to a charity or social cause, or other other ways that the proceeds are used. So I'm wondering how the projects you're involved with do so, and why you think.
Did we lose Justine?
I think we
I'm
did.
back. Am I back?
Yeah,
You're back.
Yeah, so anyways, just touching upon this element of kind of giving back in the NFT space, and how projects that you're working on approach that, or why you think it tends to be such a strong theme in this space.
That's an interesting question. Again, I think the answer is more imaginative than, sort of pouring money into a cause. I think the thing with crypto and the NFT space is that it forces you to think a little deeper. What more can you do, and how can you actually help a cause in a sustainable manner, in a self-sustaining manner? And I think, see, again, I have to point out to yield guild games and the play-to-earn economy, which is such an active way of supporting a cause, isn't it? You've created an economy and basically created an institution, which is way more powerful than a one-time interaction, even if it is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's something I do. Say, take the example of artists themselves, right? There's three ways in which you can sort of support artists or preserve a certain culture. One is the direct patronage role, right? You buy their art, you buy something of that sort. That's one, which we do in any case. The second is to create these tiny bubbles or festivals, if you can call it, curated art, or trying to launch something at a very particular time and making that a sort of a cadence, right? A yearly event in which you introduce a whole bunch of artists and then let them flow into the economy. The third, and this is most exciting and also the toughest to do, is to create an institution around this. There are causes that you believe in. There are projects that you have, and you have a particular purpose that you want to push forward in this world. You need to create an institution around it, and crypto allows you to do that in a way where you don't have to separate the making of money and the spending of money from trying to make your cause stronger, right? You don't need to separate the two. They can be part of the same economy, because everything is, again, verifiable. Your intentions are verifiable on the blockchain, as are all of your transactions. So because of that possibility, I think it's a better idea to create institutions that support your causes and create sustainable economies and markets for those causes, rather than having a one-time transaction with them.
Yeah, fully agree. So crypto has gotten a lot of headlines from people who have gotten wealthy, or maybe sold an artwork for a huge amount of money, or maybe they got into Bitcoin extremely early and they're worth a lot of money by now. Much of my work in the crypto space is trying to figure out systems where we can onboard the rest of the population, basically, whether they are players, creatives, and create systems around those, so that we can kind of spread the distribution of value and the wealth created in crypto. And of course, this is what a big part of what we're doing with Yield Guild, not only with players, but onboarding kind of creators into the metaverse economy. But this is also something that I've been exploring a lot in crypto art as well, where if we lower the barriers for people to basically access this worldwide NFT market, then a lot of artists will also have a more sustainable living. And yeah, I think this is one way to really push crypto forward into adoption, and especially kind of overcome a lot of the stigma that it's only for those people who are very early or already rich. And having that kind of accessibility means that I think crypto will be more sustainable for all.
Yeah, definitely. And then I know people have different views on fractionalization as kind of a way to lower barriers to ownership of NFTs. And I think, Twobadour, you mentioned this earlier, so I'd love to get your view on that.
Yeah, for sure, right? But even that is an evolving concept, I'd say. I mean, B20 was the first big experiment when it comes to fractionalization. Obviously, there were other examples before. There was Niftex, for instance, that we drew inspiration from, but it had never been done on that scale before, and with a bundle as big as that. So I think even that is going through an evolutionary phase. Now there are projects like Uniquely, for instance, that use the Eugenie token, which are doing more, more complex, but more streamlined ways of dealing with fractionalization as well, especially when it comes to liquidation and so on. So I think that definitely is one of the most robust ways of dealing with liquidity around NFTs, and I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of fractionalization as well. I had one of the first fractionalized axes last year using Niftex, where an axis that is now worth over $1 million was fractionalized into the ALMX token. Also, kind of huge fan of B20. Bought a bunch of it myself because I wanted to feel like I was part of this movement, of this iconic, basically this iconic piece of artwork that was developed by Twobadour Metakovan and his team. And yeah, now also actually using Uniquely, and we have collections there of hash masks and of bored apes that we fractionalize for the community. And it's a very interesting interplay between an NFT, which is unique, and basically a fractionalized token, which is a token that is more accessible to people, wherein you democratize access and you provide greater accessibility to something that is unique, to something that is valuable, and have basically more distributed ownership of it. I think this is going to continue going forward, and I think there will be a model wherein real-world assets could also be represented as NFTs and also fractionalized, so that people could have more distributed ownership in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So we have opened for the last, I guess now 8 minutes, questions to the audience. So we have one come in asking to elaborate on other projects outside of art that use NFTs, which you've mentioned some, but I'm sure there are others, or for other industries and markets. So
okay.
Basically, the question is just about like, what are some other industries or use cases for NFTs outside of art, which you've mentioned, play to earn, and some other ones, but if there are other ones that come to mind.
I guess to me, NFTs represent culture most. So I think any ideas to do with like axes that go into gaming directly, or NBA Top Shot like things have a lot of potential, and it's still as yet unexplored. Right? We have NBA Top Shots, we have So Rare, but there is so much else that's waiting to be explored. And I think, in a sense, that would also be the ideal way for crypto to get into the national economy. Of countries which have so far been sort of ambivalent about what they feel about crypto. If we introduce crypto to them via these cultural phenomena, I think that can make a lot of difference. I think that's the opportunity that's as yet been left completely untapped.
I think Gabby might be frozen, so I can speak to one I've been involved in, which was creating. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay. So NFTs can be used in so many different ways. Of course, you can, for example, own land in the virtual world. You can use it as kind of an access ticket. And even with one of the questions, can NFTs be used in public services, citizen activities? I think we're also headed to the future where, for example, your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, the land title, or the title to your car, these can be recorded as NFTs on the blockchain, and it could also be possibly kind of securitized, borrowed against, traded online. So there's so many applications that are still yet really undiscovered.
Yeah, one that I would add that we've worked on, which was also aimed at kind of broadening the scope of what NFTs could be, was I worked with UC Berkeley to create an NFT of an original invention disclosure that represented Nobel Prize winning research, and then the proceeds from the sale of that went back to fund continued R&D. So we kind of looked at that as representing like a piece of history, and then we're using that to fund research. So it's another use case that's kind of new. Another audience question is, how do you see the future of interoperability in and beyond the metaverse?
So I think interoperability is just like we've really barely scratched the surface. And that's because we're still building the worlds that these NFTs are being used on. Even if you look at some of the projects like Sandbox or Decentraland or CryptoVoxels, these are all only several years old. And as a lot of these virtual worlds build out and new ones come in, old ones die, I think you're going to see that the most popular NFTs, the most enduring ones, will really be represented in these different worlds. So, for example, if you have a CryptoPunk or Mivit's avatar, they may be avatars that can represent you in different worlds in the metaverse. Or maybe if you have a piece of artwork, of course, it's something that you can hang in your gallery in Decentraland, in your house in Sandbox. And yeah, I think it's going to be really one of the strongest use cases where you will see the NFTs in your wallet being used in context in different virtual worlds.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What legal issues or challenges do you foresee in the NFT market? Or yeah, let's start with that, and I have a follow-up.
There's a whole bunch, right? I mean, challenges could be one way of looking at it. The thing is that we are still in very early days in which people are trying to figure out what they feel about crypto itself in general. And NFTs have become a sort of a more niche thing for starters, but I think that's short-lived. I maintain that, just a little way down the line, not even years, people will start to identify crypto as NFTs, right? If someone says crypto, they're going to think NFTs because they're so visual, they're so vivid, visible. And I think the legal issues or challenges when it comes to regulations, governments and people who work with governments, more importantly, need to try and get ahead of the curve rather than trying to play catch up with the NFT space. It all comes to the on-ramp and off-ramp part, right? That's where all of the regulations become a bottleneck. Yeah. So I think we, based on what a country feels, it needs to really lock down on that aspect alone, because the rest of it is fairly simple to deal with. Gabby?
Yeah, I fully agree. I don't have much to add there.
Okay, then just to wrap up, we'll ask one last question. Do you have any tips on curating NFTs?
Okay, so as an art collector and curator, I would say that you just have to really dive in. So I've dealt with art in that I've been in game development and worked with a lot of artists, but I never really collected art before NFTs. And yeah, I just dove in and started looking at what other people were collecting at that time, people like Whale Shark who were very early in the game. And then I started gaining my own appreciation of what I liked and what styles I went for. So it is really just coming down to like personal experience and preference, and you just really have to get started.
Anything to add, Twobadour?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that he said is that you need to get into it. The one interpretation of that is you can't number crunch your way into collecting NFTs or art, right? NFTs force you to, come out of the comfort zone of economics and engage with the culture of the space. The reason we are comfortable with the NFTs that we collected is because we've spent time with the people who created them, with the artists themselves, or with the enterprises that work in this space. And I think anybody that has, an idea of trying to collect NFTs, which will in time become significant, is to make sure that what you're collecting today is important to you, even if nobody else sees value in it. Because unlike in the tokenomic space, if everything crashes, you have nothing. But in the NFT space, if there is no market for the NFT you hold in your hand right now, you better make sure that you loved it in the first place, loved it enough to go and put some money and collect it. So that would be my only suggestion.
Those are great words of wisdom from two, the best NFT curators to close on. So it's been fascinating discussion about open ownership and new economies and the metaverse and kind of all of the utility and use cases that NFTs can be leveraged for. So I will turn it back to Matthew because unfortunately we're out of time, but thank you both.
Thank you so much for joining us there. Incredible session. Really good to learn more about NFTs. If you didn't know anything before, you certainly will do now. And really some of the leaders right from the heart of the NFT space there, owning galleries in Decentraland. The B20 fund is one of the largest. I'm sure you've heard of the Beeple sale at Sotheby's. So fascinating to hear, first of all, live stream from London, hearing about Starling. As Anne Bowden says, we now have real jobs in the economy and jobs in the real economy growing from there, and then blasting out almost into outer space all around the world with talk of NFTs and the metaverse and how it's only beginning. I know that I think there's now 2% of global money supply is in crypto. It's jumped up from 1 recently, but it looks like digital transformation looks like transformation of money too, really through to digital money and crypto. And fascinating to hear about, we have real jobs created in the economy here with Starling Bank in the Philippines and other territories. We've seen people manage, or not manage, but have their own agency and be able to get yield from NFTs, which is fascinating. So just the beginning. And thank you, Justine, too, for navigating us through that. Justine really understands the space as well. So thank you, CogX, too. We're really lucky to have those 3 speakers. I would watch that back if you can to get some more clues on the future. Predictions are hard to make, but these guys certainly know what they're looking at.